Hey everyone, so happy Thursday wherever you are. I hope that you are conquering the week. I hope that you are out there making your presence count. So listen, I'm trying out a new platform today to go live. We are now live across like 8 different platforms at the same time. So just so that I know that you're out there and that you're able to respond, put in the chat box or the comment section what state you're watching from before we get going so that I can see you, and we're going to go from there. So listen, this past week, I was having a coaching conversation with a client, and the client wanted to understand how to have these really hard, difficult conversations without getting too emotional. So I want to explain a few things. As someone who has a background in emotional intelligence, I struggle when people say, I want to understand how not to get emotion. And here's why. Because emotions are behind everything that are purposeful and meaningful in our lives. And so it's understanding emotional intelligence is all about how do we use emotions to really build stronger trust and connection with other people. Hey, everybody. Hey, Chris, you said, how did you get to go live on LinkedIn? I'll message you. We'll talk about it. So I don't want to teach people how not to use emotions. I want to teach you how to use emotions in a way that builds stronger connection and trust with other people in your life. Here's what I think people say when they say, I don't want to be too emotional. What they really mean is, how do I manage my intensity? There's a level when we're not using those emotions to create trust, where we either start to get angry or cry, and the intensity level crosses to a point where our presence no longer makes it safe for either people to listen to us. It no longer makes it comfortable, so they just pacify us. So anytime, whether as a parent, in coaching athletics and leadership roles, we're going to have these hard conversations. And the reason they're hard is because it brings up so many different insecurities about ourselves. We're afraid of sometimes hurting other people's feelings. Sometimes we're not even afraid to hurt their feelings because we don't care, which is an even bigger problem. And so I want to leave you with just 3 tips today that if you as a leader, as you're going out and having these difficult conversations sometimes, what has worked for me and my clients, and 3 tips that I want to share with you. So, hey, if you, in any point in this process, if you have a tip that's really worked for you on having these hard conversations, I want you to drop it in the comment section, because I would love for other people to see what your comments and your feedback are. I'll share them as well so that we can all learn from each other. But I'm going to give you the 3 that I believe as well. So number 1, I always, in my leadership book that I just wrote about leadership presence, how to show up, stand out, and shake up the world, one of the tips about how to use your presence meaningful is love people enough to tell the truth. And I think when we're going to have these really hard conversations, we have to love people enough to tell them the truth. If we don't, what's going to happen is it comes out in really backwards ways. So we either don't say anything, and then we get resentful over time. And then when we blow up, we really blow up, which is unhealthy to the relationship. Sometimes when we don't tell the truth, it comes out very passive aggressively, or we make these jokes, but you all know that really we mean those jokes, right? And so when we say love people enough to tell them the truth, here's what I've learned. All people can handle the truth. What they cannot handle is silence and secrecy. That is what really is a detriment to our relationships long term. And so the truth, though, is a really tricky word, because it is not fact. Truth is about, I'm going to come to you and share you what is my perspective and what is true for me right now in this moment. Hey, Jessica, you said, love that. It's not the emotion that's the hurdle, it's the intensity. Yeah, right? Because so often, because I think everything meaningful in relationships is about emotion, whether that's connection, whether that emotion is what creates trust, that I believe that you're going to have my back, that you're going to see me, you're going to make me feel heard in this relationship. So everything meaningful is around emotion. It's when it gets to that intensity point that things start to go awry. So I'm glad that resonates with you. And so talk about loving people enough to tell the truth. Someone, when people come to me and they're like, hey, how do I engage in these conversations more effectively? They tell me they want to be able to to make them comfortable. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, these hard conversations, they're never comfortable. They're never going to be comfortable. So if you're going in trying to learn how to make it more comfortable, I think you're doing yourself and the other people a disservice. It's about, how do I engage in these uncomfortable conversations in a way that keeps people whole, expresses our truth, and then hopefully allows both people to move forward in a really purposeful way. And so I'm not there about making people comfortable. I'm helping you to have these conversations more effectively so that everyone's on the same page and move forward. And so loving people enough to tell them the truth is the first one. And then the second one, you're going to hear me say this a lot. I always teach people, you have to understand who you are at your best before you ever go into that conversation. Because those hard conversations, they are going to bring up our insecurities. Sometimes it's going to feel very personal when someone comes to you and gives you that difficult feedback, or it lets them know that that this isn't that maybe your personality or your work or your actions are not gelling with them. And so partly when I think about what's worked for me is I know who I am authentically at my best. And so the reason that's important is I start to get pulled out of that version. I can literally feel it creeping up in my body. And my job is to pause, to take a breath, because I know I'm about to step into my ego space and reconnect with that version of myself. Having that awareness allows me to show up more effectively. And then here's the third one I'm going to leave you with. I always say, focus on the idea of togetherness. So often we want to say, hey, you're the problem. This is what you're doing wrong. And I always believe that if you focus on the idea of togetherness, I teach a whole program around trust and the 4 factors of trust, which is truth, transparency, tact, and togetherness. And the idea of togetherness is we use inclusive language. So I come to you and say, listen, I know that we're not in a really good place right now, but I also know that I know we're both committed to making it better, even if we don't know how. And so I just want to talk to you about where do we go from here? How do we move forward together? What do you need from me? And all that kind of stuff. And so this idea of inclusiveness or this idea of togetherness will always serve the relationship. It also, what it does is I'm not going in just to be right to this conversation. I'm going to listen. I'm going to stay curious so that I can keep my ego in check. And I'm going to be open to learning something that maybe I didn't learn that changes my perspective. Is that I'm having this conversation because I want the relationship to work and move forward. And so this idea of togetherness will always serve you better when you go into those hard conversations with it. And here's the last thing. So those are the 3 tactics I would talk to you about. As you're having these conversations, love people enough to tell the truth, remember who you are at your best, and focused on the idea of togetherness. I'm going to tell you a quick little story about what my sister did. And y'all, I love my sister. And one day she had bought new tennis shoes and went to the gym and was working out. And, obviously, when you got new tennis shoes and you're breaking them in, it can be kind of difficult. And she comes home and her feet are hurting so bad. And so I try to be the kind brother. I go and I get her some Band-Aids to help her out. And then I did my empathy as a joke instead of really being serious, which was not the time. And I look at her as I'm giving the Band-Aids to her and I go, wow, sis. Sounds like looks like you had a really difficult morning. And it was very passive aggressive, but I was like, this is a lighthearted moment. We can joke. And she literally, without thinking, kind of turns her head and says, see, this is why you're single. And y'all, I literally was like PTSD into my childhood. And I was like, I'm going to karate chop her in her esophagus. Because at first it felt like a personal attack. And I had to practice everything I just taught you, some of those practices right there. First thing I did was pause, because I knew if I didn't pause and take a breath, that I was not going to remember who I was at my best, and I was going to act in a way that was not going to honor the relationship with each other. So I paused. Then I had to love her enough to tell her the truth. I said, wow, sis. I'm really surprised that you would use something that's really personal to me against me. And then as a result, and focused on this idea of togetherness, she responded, and then we had this really healthy conversation. And with a few minutes where we were fine and we were laughing, but it was being able to practice these 3 skills allowed me to dampen the emotional impact of what could have been a really unhealthy conversation, mad at each other for hours. And as a result, we were able to get over it really quick, understand where each other's coming from, and move forward. Yeah, Alex, we tend to tell ourselves so many stories during this conversation, honestly, about ourselves, and our relationships are so important. Yeah, you know what's interesting, Alex? Is everything I've ever studied in A Course in Miracles and all this, it says all relationships teach us about ourselves and the work that we still have left to do. And I always, when I get really triggered, I always, maybe not in the moment, but I will step back and say, you know what about that comment? What about that individual is really bothering me? What's underneath all of that? Because there's something that I need to learn about myself. Here's what's interesting. Almost in all of my executive coaching experience, when I work with clients, when they really do not like someone, and you ask them, what about it, or what about that individual really rubs you the wrong way? So often they'll list the traits, but what's interesting, it's the same exact behavior that they demonstrate. And so there's this line, I think Ian Van Zant has said this, and it says, I see in you what I refuse to see in myself. And so I don't like you for it. So often the very behavior that we don't like in other people is what we fail to recognize in ourselves. And so sometimes I find that when I can honor that and recognize that in myself, I have deeper empathy for people, I have deeper empathy for myself, and I show up in those relationships more effectively. And so, Shauna, one of the hardest things I had to learn was that I have toxic traits and I need to humble myself when I bring people into it to my attention. You can't ask someone to work on themselves if you're not willing to do that same. You helped me learn that. Well, thank you. It's interesting. There's a quote out there that says, love difficult people. You're one of them. And I love that, y'all. I teach this for a living. I don't got it all together, right? Here's what I always say. We're going to mess it up, but I hope we mess it up less and less. And that we're more aware about when we do, we can recover faster. We honor our relationships in a way that are able to create stronger trust and move them forward. Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much. Hey, I want to show you one final thing that I hope will help you. One of the things that I'm going to do is I actually teach a program on difficult conversations, and I want to share with you the model that I teach. I don't think you need a model. I think if you just remember who you are, love people enough to tell the truth, and focus on togetherness, you will be more successful. But I know there are people out there that are going to be like, I need a model. And if that is you, I want to be able to share this with you. I use this model. It's called STEAM. And it's like, how do we take the steam out of some of these really hard conversations? And I just want to walk you through it. Number one is all about safety. The very first thing we're going to have to do is, if you have to have a conversation with a direct report, a friend, a partner, anyone, is to say, how, when I approach that conversation, does my presence make it safe to be able to tell the truth? And the number one way that I think we do that is we establish mutual purpose, so that when we go there to say, hey, I know moving up is really important to you. And as a leader, I feel like it's my obligation to give you the feedback that you need so that you can move up in ways that are meaningful to you. And, there might be a moment where I feel like I haven't been giving you that feedback that you need. And I want to just know, would you be open if I can start to do that now? Or it could be coming to a partner and say, hey, I got to tell you, I'm sorry. There's been some stuff coming up for me and I haven't told you, and I just wanted to see if we can talk about it, right? So does my presence in the very beginning make it safe? Do I manage the intensity? And I always ask permission to have the conversation. By the way, everyone has always said yes. But if they didn't, I would honor that. But I would say, hey, I still think having this conversation is important. When would be a good time to have it? So I'm going to have empathy, but I'm not going to remove responsibility. So at step one is we make it safe. Number two is I tell my truth as I see it. So this is what's coming up for me. This is what I'm experiencing. So we tell our truth. And then third step is this is where the work really happens. Your emotional intelligence is going to be tested in step number 3, is because can you pause and be quiet and sit back and allow them to explore their truth? They're going to respond and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I was doing that. Or I think you're crazy. Or whatever is going to happen, you're going to have to sit down and explore their truth. And step number 4 is all about acknowledging. This is one of the most important traits that we learn in coaching, is how do we acknowledge and validate people's experience? So after this individual shares with you their truth, to be able to say, okay, wow, I didn't see or realize it was coming across that way. Or, you know what? I could see how when I haven't shared feedback in a while that you might feel that I was checked out of this relationship. We acknowledge what we just heard. Acknowledging does not mean agreement. So we just are honoring, saying, I see you and I hear you. And then the last part is once we've had this conversation, and it might not all happen in just one conversation, we have to get to a point where we make some mutual agreements about how to move forward and move forward in a really healthy way. So what do you need from me moving forward? I'm going to express what I need from you. We're going to get on the same page, and then we're going to be able to, go from there. I will say this. I wished it was just seamless where we just go through these 5 steps really easy. It's not. Usually you go from TEA back to TEA to TEA, and it's a circle and circle until everyone's had a chance to kind of voice their opinion, and then we figure out how do we want to move forward together. So I don't know if that helps you. Drop a comment in there if you do. If you think that model helps you, I'd love to kind of hear from you and understand if that's something you think you can use. So any other tips from you all on how to, tips that you've used in your career, personally, professionally, that have really worked for you? Put them in the chat box, and then I'm going to do one final thing. So it has been a while, y'all, since I launched my little mini book on leadership presence. And so I had done this whole kind of campaign where people were purchasing the book and sending me their receipts. And so I have kept all of them. And I know I gave away some free coaching sessions and everyone thought I was done, but I am not. So I still have all of these. And I want to do a free 30-minute coaching session for 2 people. So I'm going to draw 2 more names. And if we do that, you're going to get I'm going to reach out to you and we'll do some free coaching sessions along the way. So number 1 would be, let's see who this is. Brittany Gomez Olson. So you had purchased and sent me your receipt on Twitter. So I will reach out to you. And so we will do that. And second person, let's see who this one is. Yeah, I wished I was rich enough to be like Oprah. I'd give stuff away all the time. I love it. All right. Hey, Michael Cooper from Instagram. So you sent me your info. So I have it. I will reach out to both of you. Hey, by the way, I'm going to give out some free copies of my book. If you know someone who think this information might be helpful, tag them in the comment section. I'm going to look at all the people that tagged, and I'm going to do a drawing. We'll give away some copies of probably all 3 of my books, but at least this one. All right. Yeah. Any questions from you all before I end? I hope that's been helpful. It's just been interesting that out of the last week, that this conversation around having the hard conversation keeps coming up. I will say this, on December 16th, I'm actually teaching a full day workshop. It's 2.5 in the morning, 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours in the afternoon, but doing a virtual program. I'm partnering with Leadership Louisville. They are such great partners. They offer so many free events, paid events. I'm really helping people just show up better in their lives. I'm doing a session with them on December 16th. And so I'm going to try to pull the link and see if we can do that. And I'm going to drop it in the comment section. If you want to kind of see more about that and understand how to register, if you do, you can see that. I think the link is only going to go out to my Facebook public page. So I just sent that. But if you just Google Leadership Louisville, Difficult Conversations, December 16th, you'll see all the information out there. If not, I just hope this information helps you right where you are. And so, yeah, Melissa, love this. Difficult conversations are crucial, especially now. Yeah, I think to your point, I think they're just always important. I always say no one gets through any long-term relationship without disappointing each other from time to time, without saying something that unintentionally is going to hurt somebody's feelings. And we've got to be able to understand how to go into those in a safe way that creates stronger trust and understand what each other needs so that we can move forward in healthier ways. And so, and maybe, Melissa, to your point, we are all home so much more now that maybe we're getting under each other's skin even more. So maybe this is an even more important lesson. I'm not sure, but I hope it helps you all. Listen, I am just so thankful to have all of you on this journey with me. Thank you for your questions, your insights. They definitely make me better. I always say, if no one tells you they believe in you, I believe in you. Hey, if you have questions, keep dropping them in the comment section. I'm going to be going through the comments after the broadcast. I will answer some of them, tag someone that you think might want some books, all of that kind of stuff. And I am just sending you also love. So hang in there. Know that this crazy guy is thinking about you, sending you some love. And I look forward to talking with you all soon. I'll be doing some more lives soon. Now that I have this platform, I can go live across all the platforms at the same time. It just makes it easier. All right. Sending y'all some love. Bye-bye.